we have the consensus, the OK Baseball Podcast Year 1 top 10 positional players, 1 through 10. This is pretty fun. I think now, do we start at the 1 or do we start at 10? I think starting at
Oh
1 might
no,
be
no. Let's start from the bottom, like
okay.
Drake.
Ooh, okay. Start from the bottom. Okay. All right. I see you, Toronto over there from the 6, but we're going to start from the 10. We're going to start from the 10, though. All right. Number 10. This should be pretty fun. Where's my Cleveland Guardian fans at? Number 10, Jose Ramirez. This was, to me, I think, a pretty easy situation putting him in the top 10. I think that he had a fantastic season last year. I think he's only going to get better. If you look at his stats, you could make the argument that he could belong a higher than 10, but it was a little tough to do this. So I'm going to put him at 10. Well, we both did. This is a consensus pick. What's your thoughts on Jose Ramirez for the Cleveland Guardians?
Yeah, man, one of my favorite players in all of baseball. I mean, there's just nothing this guy can't do, and that's like, and I know like I'm gushing, and we're starting at number 10, and so
This is great.
imagine what I'm going to be like at number 1. But yeah, no, just the power, the ability to steal bases, the defense. I know we're only talking about hitting really, but his ability to get on base and to never strike out and still hit the ball hard, all of it, like he might be one of the more complete players in all of baseball, and doing it in a frame that I can relate to.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, me too. Exactly right. He's got the dad bod look, and he's willing to get to the top 10 in positional players. I'll take that all day. All right, number 9. We're going with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Only one Dodger makes this list, by the way, and they're at number 9. So go ahead and debate a wall, Dodgers fans, if you don't like this. But number 9 goes to Mookie Betts. What's your thoughts on Mookie Betts? Obviously, we see him traded over from Boston a few years back. He's had some great seasons in LA. He's still deserving to be in this top 10. Sits at number 9, Sean.
Yeah, man. Like, this guy is quietly one of the best players in all of baseball, and I was so happy that he got out of the AL East, but kind of not really happy about it, because then you don't get to see him as often, right? He's one of those guys who you hate him because he's so good, and now that he's not playing against a division rival, I can just sit back and relax, and you kind of wonder if he was kind of slowing down a little bit over 2021, only 23 home runs, only 3.8 wins above replacement. And that's what we're talking about here. Only 3.8 for a guy who's had a 10.5 win season already. Since 2014, he's collected 50 wins above replacement. This could be one of the best players of all time when all is said and done. And so Mookie Betts looking like every bit the guy I hated in the AL East.
How weird is it going to be this season when we see a side-by-side of Mookie Betts and Xander Bogaerts, but they're wearing a Los Angeles Dodgers and San Diego Padres uniform? Boston Red Sox fans, you might not want to watch that series because they're going to talk about that. That's going to be a storyline they talk about the entire first through third inning, especially if you got Boog on the call. So, interesting on that one. But, I mean, Mookie Betts, Xander Bogaerts, hey.
That picture will be on my Christmas cards this coming season.
Good idea. Let's make that happen. All right, number 8. I feel like I lost this one with the consensus pick. However, I mean, it was hard to put him any higher or lower, but I feel like I lost this one. I wanted him a little higher. You had him a little lower. He found himself at number 8, and that's Manny Machado. I thought that he had a MVP caliber season last year. He could have. I think he could have won it over Paul Goldschmidt. I think he has some of the best defense in all of baseball. I think he's the second best defender at third base in all of baseball. He's got some great hitting tools. I think he's coming up on a contract year. I think he's going to be absolutely amazing for the San Diego Padres this year. That's why Manny Machado's in our top 10. He sits at number 8, Sean.
Yeah, and I mean, I got to say, like, you're lucky I put his name down at all. We've talked about this many times, but this is Manny Machado and I are like oil and water, man. I can't. But what I will say is the guy is 30. And I would have put money down that he was much older. And because we've been hearing his name forever, but forever ago was when he was 19, right? So 30 years old, still about to hit free agency at a ripe age, at a perfect age. He's going to get paid again. And last year, putting up 7.4 wins above replacement might be just his most perfect season that he's had in his entire career, and that's that's kind of impossible for me to wrap my head around. That A, it's Manny Machado, B, he's only 30, and C, he just had the best season of his career.
You put a full season of Juan Soto, a returning season of Tatis Jr., and a season of Xander Bogaerts around him hitting. Who do you not pitch to? You got to pitch to all of them, right? So there's a chance. There's a really big chance in my mind that Manny Machado has a better season than he did last year. What's your thoughts?
I mean, it's tough to imagine, but certainly you can see him driving in more runs. And like you said, I don't know that you can pitch around him. So, I don't know that that's going to dramatically increase things like his walk rate or, his on-base percentage. But man, I mean, you got to be careful. That's the big thing, right? And maybe that's when people start making mistakes, is because they're trying to be too careful. And you got to, like, all the way down the lineup, you got to be so careful. So maybe Manny Machado gets in a couple extra mistake pitches.
Yeah, could you imagine? Yeah, I think Manny Machado is one of the funnest players in baseball. I followed him, and I loved him in Baltimore. I know you're not a fan of him. I think it comes back to his Baltimore days, but what he's doing over in San Diego has been really exciting. I think he's taking a whole new leadership role, and I'd love to see what happens this year, as you can, in my mind, put them as a World Series favorite. We'll get all those predictions on a later episode, but just going to throw that out there now. All right, at number 7, it's going to go to the guy who beat Manny Machado in that AL MVP race. That's Paul Goldschmidt. He sits at number 7 on this list. What a season he had last year. You got to think he's going to regress a little bit. However, his defense, his play is outstanding. His bat is fantastic. I mean, this St. Louis infield is covered with gold gloves. And yes, the pitching might be a little bit of worrisome. However, with the offensive production that St. Louis has, and you put Goldschmidt there, even though he's getting a little bit older, I don't see him slowing down anytime soon. I feel he could have just another great season. I'm not going to put him in my top 3 or 4 to win the NL MVP again this year. I'm not going to do that. I do think he's going to regress just a little bit. However, I do think he's going to be good enough to still be a top 10 player in this league.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that's exactly what you just said. I think you're 100% correct. He's 35 years old, which I found surprising. Almost as surprising as the fact that Manny Machado is still only 30. So I also expect to see some kind of regression. Will it be dramatic? I don't think so. Looking at his projections, he's still projected to hit around 30 home runs. His on-base percentage probably won't be around 400 again, but still quite high. Weighted runs created plus, he's projected at 140, which sounds really low considering he put up 177 last year. There's some regression there, but where he's regressing to is still pretty good.
Yes, absolutely. I think Paul Goldschmidt's going to have a great season this year. I think he could get himself back into the NL MVP race. I'm going to leave him just off it right now. Honorable mention, if you will. We'll have to get at that. We're going to have a prediction award show or something like that once we get closer to opening day. Predict our World Series, maybe a couple MVPs, talks, Rookie of the Years. We'll have some fun on that episode. All right, sitting at number 6, we didn't go too far. We stayed in the Central. Hell, we even stayed on the same team. That goes to Nolan Arenado. He sits in the number 6 spot here. Going back to the Manny Machado talk, I said Manny Machado is the second best third baseman in all of baseball. Nolan Arenado is the best third baseman in all of baseball, especially when it comes to defense. Now, you could make the same argument that his offense might regress a little bit, just like Paul Goldschmidt. You could make that happen because he had such a great season last year. I'm not going to go and do that, though. I think Nolan Arenado is going to have a great year, and I think he is in the race for the NL MVP. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I've agreed with you up until now, this whole episode. I think we're forgetting about Ke'Bryan Hayes in Pittsburgh as far as defensive third baseman goes. However, Nolan Arenado, he's pretty up there. I mean, it's hard to do any better than Nolan Arenado, and the fact that what he can contribute on both sides of the ball, I think, is massive. Will he be MVP? Who knows? But does he have a shot? Every single year. And that's why he's up here on this list for me. Because the one thing was, oh, can he do it outside of Colorado? And
Right.
I think that talk has gone exactly where it belongs, away. And so every year, his name has to be in the MVP conversation.
Do you think Dick Manfort still thinks Arenado's on his team since he's wondering if he can has his team play 500 baseball? I'm just curious. I'm just wondering if that's the case. Because I'm really curious. Maybe Trevor Story. I'm not sure. But yeah, Nolan Arenado is going to have a great season. Let's mark that one down now. Let's book it. Number 5. Mm-hmm. This is going to be an interesting name. I don't think you guys are ready for this at number 5. But before I say this, remember, we're talking about just positional players. Shohei Ohtani sits at number 5 for us. Yes, we don't add his pitching woes, or his pitching successes, I should say, not woes, into this list. This is just for his hitting tool only and his positional play. So that's why he sits at number 5. A little bit of spoiler alert for next episode when we talk about the pitchers. He's on that list too. So he'll be the only guy that makes both lists. But we got Shohei Ohtani sitting at number 5 for positional players. I mean, what an absolute talent this guy is. We are seeing, history in the making every time he's up to bat. He's one of the most fun players to watch in all of baseball. I know you got numbers in front of you. What's your thoughts on Shohei Ohtani sitting in the middle of this list at number 5?
Yeah, and I think, in all honesty, when I start looking at it, I'm actually wondering if, even though we kind of separate the fact that he pitches and he hits, I can't help but wonder if we're kind of just so in awe of the fact that this guy can do what he does at the level at which he does it. Because when you're looking at his numbers, they're great. I'm not going to sit here and dump on his numbers, but they're right in line with everybody else on this list. He's not a standout as far as his offensive production goes. Is he a standout on the Angels team? Absolutely. He and Mike Trout are carrying that team. And so I'm not trying to take anything away from Shohei Ohtani, and I hope that doesn't come across. But projected at around 35 home runs again, consistently hitting home runs, getting on base, weighted runs created plus. Some projections, I'm looking at them, most of them have him actually with a higher weighted runs created plus next year than he had this year. So I'm wondering if they kind of think like his 2022 was a bit of a down year, but after hitting 46 home runs the year before, maybe that's where they're coming from. He's still a special talent, and he's still going to be a very, very important part of this Angels team moving forward. Can he repeat? I think he has a very similar season this year that he did last year.
With Art Moreno saying that he's not selling the team anymore, he came out saying about the future of Shohei Ohtani, saying he wants to keep him long term. I think Shohei Ohtani is going to just go absolutely nuts this season. I think that when you talk about who can be in the race for MVP, I think you have to add his name by default every single year, not just because of his positional play, but because of his two-way player, ability, absolute just success, how he does it just so well on both sides, just like you mentioned. But yeah, I do think Shohei Ohtani is going to have a better year offensively. Not saying he had a bad one last year, but I do think he succeeds a little more. I think that offense on the Angels has improved drastically. And I don't think you can get any worse from Anthony Rendon. I think you're going to have to get some improvements from him. That's also going to help out here. And obviously, there's a guy that we haven't talked about yet who's also on this squad named Mike Trout. Let's go to number 4. And I think number 4 is also an interesting one here. I think a lot of people might be surprised that he is already this high on the list. But you and I we should probably start in this. You and I were consensus. When we put our list out, we had 1, 2, 3, and 4 exactly the same. 5 through 10 is where it got muddy for us, but 1 through 4 was exactly the same. So I think we can both be able to fight this one with a toothpick and a flashlight if need be. However, let's go and talk about number 4, and that's Julio Rodriguez, sitting in the number 4 spot. What a season he had last year. I don't think that's going to slow down anytime soon. He is a special talent. I think he is the biggest star of the next generation of prospects of talent that's coming up here. And I don't think that's going to slow down. I think he is just a very fun talent. And I'm excited because I'm moving in the Seattle area. I'm going to be able to see him firsthand. So this is not a bias of being saying that he's going to be, or I'm going to be in the Seattle area and get to watch him. Julio Rodriguez deserves this number 4 spot. What's your thoughts on him at number 4?
Griffey 2.0. I think
Right.
that's the first thing that comes to my head. And that guy, Ken Griffey Jr., captivated me from a very young age. And Julio Rodriguez is doing the same thing. 22 years old, has such a bright future ahead of him. We saw him at the All-Star game, the home run derby. Like this kid is really kind of announced his presence on a Mariners team that could actually be very exciting to watch. They've, finally the turnstiles of spinning trades, and I think they found a combination that could do some serious damage. And Julio Rodriguez will be the centerpiece of it, playing center field, but also being the centerpiece of that squad.
I don't know if I'm ready to give props to Jerry DiPoto yet, though. So hang on a second, slow down. No, regardless, I do think Julio Rodriguez is going to be fun. I think the Seattle Mariners team is going to be fun. We obviously have to put this thought out there, though, because we've seen this from studs who take off their rookie year. Will we see some sort of a sophomore slump from Julio Rodriguez? Obviously, we don't think so. We still have it number 4. So why don't you think that happens?
Why don't we think that happens? I think he's just too good. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's everything from his swing, everything. It's so repeatable, and I don't see it slumping. And the fact that he can also he combines the power with the contact, I think, is something that gives me at least confidence in saying, he could put up the same season he had last year, or even better.
AL Rookie of the Year last year. Will Julio Rodriguez be in the AL MVP talk come the end of 2023?
He should have been already. He should have been this past season. That's my opinion. So I absolutely, if he can do what he did this season, maybe even be a little bit better, absolutely, he should be there. Especially if the Mariners kind of make a little bit more noise in their division, as opposed to kind of sneaking into the wild card spot. If they can have a little bit more success in the win-loss column, I think he has to be.
AL West is going to be exactly that, the wild, wild West. It's going to be such a fun division to watch, with the Mariners rising, the Rangers spending every single dollar in the heart of Texas, and then obviously the Houston Astros just being what they are. That division is going to be really fun. Well, nice segue here. Speaking of, will we see someone in the AL MVP race? Let's talk about the AL MVP of last season. That's we have at number 3. That's Aaron Judge. Wow, we only have the guy who hit 62 home runs in the AL MVP in number 3. Yes, we do. However, yes, he is a fantastic player. I think that he could well deserve maybe one of these other spots. You'd have to debate this really hard for me to change my mind. However, Aaron Judge at number 3, I don't see him hitting 62 home runs next year, but I think that's a very fair assessment, right? But we could see him, I think, being very easily a 40 home run guy as long as he's healthy, and that's still a fantastic season. I will go out and say I'm sure we will see and hear, as long as he's healthy, him being in the AL MVP race once again this season, Sean.
Absolutely. And as much as it kills me, as much as I would have enjoyed Aaron Judge playing in San Francisco or anywhere else, I'm actually kind of glad that he's back in New York, right? Because I think that's, you want to beat the best, and Aaron Judge is absolutely one of the best. Listen to this. Go to his StatCast page. Average exit velocity, 100th percentile. Maximum exit velocity, 99th percentile. Hard hit rate, 100th percentile. It's like it just goes on and on. Barrel rate 100th percentile, expected slugging rate 100th percentile, walk rate 99th percentile. Like, this guy is legitimately probably one of the most feared hitters in all of baseball, because when he hits the ball, he does not miss it.
Right, that's true. And we've seen earlier in his career, he had some issues with the strikeouts that has drastically improved. And now, when he's just like you said, when he hits it, it goes out. I had the opportunity to see 2 of his home runs last year at Camden Yards when I went and watched the Orioles-Yankees series. One went to the section just to the left of me, and I'm one of those people that usually like to give a home run or a foul ball to a little kid if that happens. But I will say, if I would have caught an Aaron Judge home run, I probably would have kept that one. Just saying. Just going to keep that one out there. I think Aaron Judge is a great talent. I'm looking forward, and I'm with you. I would have loved to see him on the West Coast. I thought it just would have been cool to see the Giant play for the Giants, but we're going to see him in pinstripes. He gets the captain this season, but he doesn't get our number 1 spot. We sit him at number 3. All right, and right. The number 2 spot, this is a player that usually is a consensus number 1 for most lists. However, we have him at number 2. That is Mike Trout. Mike Trout is a generational talent. There's no doubt about it. You could make the argument that he could be, when healthy or if healthy for all his years, he could be the greatest of all time. I mean, I've heard that conversation. I've heard that debate a few times. However, we got him sit at number 2. I'm going to say that's a little bit because of injury. I don't want to fully talk about that. I don't think that's the absolute reason why we have him at number 2, but I think that's a strong case. But even when he played in his 116 games last year, I think it was, he was still absolutely incredible. I'm sure you have the WRC Plus in front of you in the season last year. Still, what he did in just that short amount of games last year was outstanding. If he can play a full season, we're going to see him rev up and get ready to go in the World Baseball Classic this year, playing for Team USA. If he can play a full season around that better offense of Anaheim with a stout and ready to go Shohei Ohtani, with a Hunter Renfroe, with hopefully an Anthony Rendon that fires up and keeps going, Mike Trout, I think, can get back to being the guy that we know can be the best player in baseball, not just the American League, but in baseball, period.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I mean, it would be nice if you could actually see a playoff game. That right. That would be kind of cool.
I am not an Angels fan whatsoever, but that is something that I strive to talk about every offseason. Man, would I love to see the Angels make the playoffs.
Yeah. And only because of Mike Trout. The Angels don't deserve to make the playoffs. not the way they're constructed, but especially not with the owner they have. But just for Mike Trout, won't somebody please think of Mike Trout? But getting back to him specifically, last season, so I'm going to throw out 2020, throw that out for everybody. In fact, I'm sure the entire world wishes we could just forget about 2020.
Absolutely.
I'm also going to get rid of last season because he only played in 36 games. So taking out those 2 seasons, since 2012, last year was his worst season, and he put up 6 wins above replacement, 40 home runs, weighted runs created plus of 176, and that was arguably his worst season. I mean, I feel like there's nothing more anybody can say about Mike Trout and how good he is. And he's expected to do the same next year, and so not only this is why Mike Trout stands out, right? It's not just because he's capable and has all the talent in the world, but he does it every single year. Quietly does his own thing, destroying baseballs, destroying pitchers' careers. So I expect more of the same from him next year.
If he is completely healthy this year, when we go back to this list next year, you could probably already make that prediction that we're probably going to sit him at the number 1 spot. What do you think?
It depends on how our this year's number 1 spot placeholder does, in all honesty.
Yeah, very true. Let's talk about that spot. Number 1 sitting here. Real quick, let's round out our final top 10. At number 10, we had Jose Ramirez. Number 9, Mookie Betts. Number 8, Manny Machado. 7, Paul Goldschmidt. 6, Nolan Arenado. Number 5, Shohei Ohtani, the positional player. Number 4, Julio Rodriguez. Number 3, Aaron Judge. And number 2, Mike Trout. Sitting in the number 1 spot in the first annual OBP Top 10 positional players, that's Juan Soto, baby. Juan Soto, San Diego Padres now, going into his first full season in San Diego. I mean, how can you not love this spot for Juan Soto? What this offense has, you're going to have to pitch to him every night. I mean, it's the West Coast Murderers Row. And even if he was the only player still on that Washington National squad, I'd still think I'd put him in this number 1 spot. What a talent this guy is. I mean, even when he plays good defense in the corner outfield, but his offensive production is just absolutely insane and deserves this number 1 spot. And I think he's going to be your NL MVP this season with all the talent that surrounds him in San Diego. I mean, I just can't help but just know he's just going to have such a great year, John. Such a great year.
Yeah, no, and I think I've said that on this show already that I that's his award to lose. He's going to just go off in San Diego, and you could look at his season last year, and he's only hit 27 home runs, and his weighted runs created plus was only 145, and he only put up 3.8 wins above. Stop it.
I mean, getting
He may
traded
have struggled.
sucks too, though. Getting traded sucks. Let's keep that in mind too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're going from literally one side of the country to the other. Like we just went coast to coast. Juan Soto went coast to coast and he
Yeah.
moved coast to coast. And I think
And he
that
went
that
from the basement to the attic too. He went from the worst team in
absolutely.
baseball to arguably one of the best teams too. So yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, all of that included, I'm not overly concerned about whether or not he struggled in San Diego so far because as you said, he is not going to struggle this coming season in that lineup. Projected at 113 RBI, I bet you, or sorry, excuse me. I was looking at runs scored. That's going up too, by the way. But RBIs around 90, 95. He's hitting 100 easily. 30 home runs ish, 35, book it. Weighted runs created plus 160 to 170. I think 170, 175. I just feel like he's going off this year in San Diego, and I cannot wait